Well, because we have a big day ahead of us, more riding in buses. Very nearby is Naimisharanya, so that's where we'll be visiting. This morning we'll be discussing the remaining journey after Subahu is killed, and the mission that Vishwamitra Muni had engaged Ram and Lakshman in to Mricha and Subahu, who were defiling the sacrifice at Siddha Ashram. So the next morning, mission accomplished, specifically even for Vishwamitra Muni, because we'll hear some detail about the duration of his stay in the Himalayas, and he had taken a sacred vow for the benefit of the world to leave his favorite place and come to Siddha Ashram to perform yajnas, but that was being interfered with by Mricha and Subahu, and so that was taken care of. Now, next morning, after their morning duties, attended Mangalarti and chanted 16 rounds and offered Tulsi Puja. And after their morning duties, they came before Vishwamitra Muni and, with folded palms, asked, "Is there some further service for us?" That's their mood. Vishwamitra Muni said, "Yes, today we're going to Mithila, and you must come with us. There's a big yajna that King Janaka is going to perform, and we will be attending, so you must come with us." And so they did. 100 bullock carts. This is, renounced rishis. But there was all paraphernalia for worship. 100 bullock carts were loaded with paraphernalia for worship and other items for the journey. And they began their journey to Mithila from Siddha Ashram. And Vishwamitra Muni knew that he was not going to return to Siddha Ashram because his purpose, the religious vow that he had taken, had now been fulfilled, and he was going to leave and never return. And so he bid farewell to the gods of the forest, and as the entourage began to depart, so did all the forest animals and birds. Every single one of them, they were attached to Vishwamitra Muni, and they followed him for some distance. And Vishwamitra Muni turned and requested them, "Please go back." So, feeling separation, but wanting to be obedient to Vishwamitra Muni, they returned. And the journey continued for the whole day till they reached the bank of the Sona River. And in the evening, Vishwamitra Muni began a discussion with Ram and Lakshman, a little bit more about his history. So we're going to hear about the history of Vishwamitra Muni, and the lineage of Vishwamitra Muni is in that little glossary and lineages depiction. So he describes that one of the direct sons of Lord Brahma was named Kusha. And Kusha accepted as his wife one of the daughters of Vidarbha. And 4 sons were born, and there's details about those 4 sons presented in Valmiki Ramayana, but we'll focus on one of those 4s because that's the line in which Vishwamitra Muni appears. One of those were what was Kusha Nabha. Kusha Nabha. Now in the Bhagavatam, just to make note, the name is different, otherwise the narration is pretty much the same. Kushambha. But we're going to stick with Kushanabha because we're reciting Valmiki Ramayana. And Kushanabha had first 100 daughters. And they were very beautiful, very qualified, very happy. And together the 100 daughters were enjoying their activities together, and providential arrangement. Vayu, the god of the wind, came and saw them and went, woo, 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 I'm attracted to you. And he approached them and offered them something better than what they had. You're in this realm of mortals, and if you become my wives, then I'll take you to another place and you'll live much longer and have more opulence, and come on along with me. Just like that, pretty straightforward. And the 100 girls were taken aback. You're a noble person. And we're the daughters of Kusha Nabha. And we wouldn't even think of accepting someone as our husband unless it was told to us by our father. So please don't speak like this. And go talk to our father. Vayu had already become attached, and he became disturbed at their refusal. And so Vayu entered their bodies through air, and they became deformed and hunchbacked. Instantly. Didn't happen gradually. So they were before beautiful, now not the same. So they went back to their father, Kushanabha, and when he saw them, he said, "What happened? You went out looking normal, and you came back looking very different." So they told the story, what happened. And Kushanabha went to his ministers, said, "What to do? My daughters are of marriageable." He praised them, first of all, saying, "You're very noble." And he used the word forbearance multiple times because of the way that you have been trained and adherence to the way that you have been trained. Although there was some opportunity to deviate from the way that you've been trained, you didn't. This quality of forbearance is a great quality of a woman, it's a great quality of humanity, it's a quality of the one who has greatness, so I honor you for that. Now I'm your father, I have to make some arrangements. So his ministers suggested that there's a very qualified son of Chuli. Chuli is a powerful, pure, ascetic personality who was being assisted by an Apsara, Gandharvi, a female Gandharva, and she was helping him for a long, long time, and after a long, long time, he said, "You please me very much by your assistance, and you can ask for some benediction." And she said, "Well, I would like to have a son, qualified son." So, from his mind, Chuli provided a son. And the son will be very great and qualified and spiritually inclined. His name was Brahmadatta. And Brahmadatta then eventually became a king. So this is the ministers advising Kushanabha what to do. So King Brahmadatta does not yet have a queen. So I suggest that you approach Brahmadatta and request him to accept your 100 now deformed hunchback daughters as queens. So he did. And Brahmadatta said yes. And he was very powerful, as mentioned. It's very spiritually qualified. Just by touching the daughters, they all became normal again. And they became his queens. That's Kushanabha's 100 daughters. And then he desired to have a son. So Kushanabha arranged for a sacrifice, a yajna. And just as the sacrifice was to begin, his father's name was Kusha. And Kusha, who was the son of Lord Brahma, said, "Your sacrifice will be successful. You'll have an extremely qualified son who you should name Gadhi. And Gadhi will rule and be a virtuous person, and all blessings to you." And with that, he rose in the air and went to Brahmaloka, went even beyond heaven, Kusha. So the yajna was performed, and Gadhi was born later, and Vishwamitra Muni says, "I'm the son of Gadhi. And because I'm in the line of Kusha, I am also known as Kaushika. Kaushika, in the line of Kusha. And I have a sister, so brother and sister, Vishwamitra Muni. His sister's name was Satyavati. And Satyavati was married to the sage Richika. We're going to hear about Satyavati and Richika shortly. And Satyavati was perfectly qualified, perfectly served her husband, highly spiritually elevated, and after her life, she went in her same body to the heavenly region. And there Satyavati, became a sacred river in the heavenly region that then descended to the Himalayas, known as Kaushiki. And so I, Vishwamitra Muni, my favorite place is in the Himalaya mountains by the side of Kaushiki, because I have a lot of affection for my elder sister. So also Satyavati, but Kaushiki river. But I took a vow. I left that favorite place of mine to come here to Siddha Ashram. The purpose has been explained, and you've taken care of the interference with that purpose, and for that reason now I've left Siddha Ashram. So this discussion went on at night. The next morning, when they rose, they began their journey and came from the river Sona to the river Ganga once again. And they're going to cross the river Ganga. And Ram noticed that some parts of that particular area where they were planning the crossing, some places were high because there were sand dunes underneath, some places were deep. And so Ram volunteered a suggestion. Why don't we just cross where the sand dunes are and we won't need a boat? Just a suggestion. And Vishwamitra Muni replied with a verse that's often quoted, very similar to what Yudhisthira Maharaj said to the Yaksha, Mahajano Yena Katasa Panta. We follow the great souls. So Vishwamitra Muni didn't like the idea of suggestions. He said, Esha Panta Maya Udishto Yena Yati Maharshayaha. Follow the path laid down by great saints in the past. Now, I wasn't chastising him, just making an utterance that's a principle that should guide our lives. It's just crossing rivers. We do things all the time. But being mindful, when there's opportunity to do so, being mindful of great souls, and when great souls encountered a situation like this, what did they do? And follow that. There's always variations, but if the mind goes there, if the contemplations go there, that's best. That's a principle to live by. So the commentators expand on that significantly. So for the rest of the half of the day, they then traveled further. The river that they crossed was the Sona. The river that they crossed was the Sona, then they reached the Ganges. When they reached the Ganges, they made their offerings to the Ganges in the proper way, palmfuls of Ganges into the Ganges with a certain prayer. And the certain prayer when worship the Ganges is, what do I have to offer you? You have given all benedictions to me, what do you need? But I can only offer my devotion, and so please accept my devotion with palmful of Ganges. A mood of making offerings to a worshipable superior. So by the end of the day, it was story time, narration. Ram asked Vishwamitra Muni, can you describe the history of the Ganges? Everything has its history, and this is a itihasa, a history text, so he is glad to give that history. So now we're going to take some assistance from technology and describe the descent of the Ganges. So the narration begins, Vishwamitra Muni describes how the Ganges originated. And in his narration, the Ganges originated by becoming one of the two daughters of Himavan and Meru. Meena. So Himavan is the most majestic of the mountains in the Himalayas, and Mount Meru's daughter is Meena. So, the first eldest daughter was requested by the demigods, please allow Ganga to come and be with us, because she's so sacred, she's purifying, everything will be made superlatively nice if she can come with us. So Himavan agreed. And the second daughter, Uma, was inclined to austere practices and performance of activities like that. And so Uma was given in marriage to Lord Shiva. So another one of her names is Himavati. They were married or united, and for 1 year they were in very attracted to one another manner, associating. And Lord Brahma and the demigods became a little anxious. So they approached Lord Shiva saying, we're very concerned. If a child is born of you, that child will be unstoppable. And so, please don't conceive a child. Because if it's an unstoppable bad child, we're all finished. You're Lord Shiva, we're fine with you, but so, being kind, Lord Shiva said, all right, I won't conceive children. But there's life fluid stored within my body, and it has to be discharged somewhere. So, what do you suggest? And their suggestion was, the earth can bear that semen, and so the semen was then dislodged on earth. That filled up all the mountains and valleys and everything all together, and the earth was overwhelmed. So the demigods said to Agni, both you and Vayu must enter. So they entered, and the earth was feeling overburdened. So meanwhile, Uma said to the demigods, I curse you. You've prevented me from having a son. I curse you. You'll have no children. Pretty heavy. So after some time, the demigods had some anxiety once again. You know, going to heaven and even being a demigod, it's not Vaikuntha. So their anxiety was, we're going to need a commander-in-chief, a general, to give us protection from the Daityas when they cause us trouble. Lord Shiva was doing that, but now with Uma he's engaged in all these long austerities and we don't have a solution. Lord Brahma, what should we do? You're all-knowing. They said, well, the curse of Uma can't be bypassed. It's irrevocable. So there is a solution, and the solution is, if Agni produces a child with Ganga, then that child will be great and powerful, and then that child can be given to Uma because they're sisters, and she'll be happy to receive that child. So that was Brahma's pronunciation, and Agni accepted the direction of Brahma, and he approached the Ganges, who then accepted a form, and then a child was conceived, and the embryo within the body of Ganga was burning her. What to do? It's too unbearable. The advice was given, deposit the embryo at the foot of the Himalaya mountains. And so she did. And the embryo immediately transformed the mountain at which it was placed at the base of into gold. And soon a son was born. And the son that was born, the arrangement was made that the kritikas would become nurses of that newborn son. And there were 6 of them, and the 6 of them then nourished the child to its maturity. And so one of the names of the child that was born is Kartikeya, at their request, the son of the Kritikas, Kartikeya. And another name of the child was Skanda, because the child was born from this dislodged embryo, or embryonic fluid. So Skanda. And very soon, Kartikeya, having been entrusted to Uma as her son, he became very powerful and became the general that the demigods wanted. Then Vishwamitra Muni begins describing the story of King Sagara. Sagara was a king of Ayodhya in the Ikshvaku line. And he goes through this detailed description of the lineage. He names them one by one. There's multiple times in Ramayana where the entire lineage from Lord Brahma to Marichi to Kashyapa to Vivaswan, then Vivasvata Manu. It's slightly different than the Bhagavatam. Manu, Ikshvaku, Kukshi, Vikukshi, etc. And down to the line where Asita, in the line of Ikshvaku or in the line of Vivasvata Manu, in the line of that dynasty, Asita was the king of Ayodhya. Asita, the king of Ayodhya, was confronted in battle with the Haihayas. Haihayas are powerful. We'll hear about Kartaviryarjuna, king of the Haihayas. We heard about him. He's the one who defeated Ravana. So, Asita left his kingdom. He was banished from Ayodhya, and he went to the Himalayas with his 2 wives. And while his 2 wives were both pregnant, he died. So some conspiracy took place. One of the 2 wives tried to poison the other one so that her son would be the successor. And Kalindi was the one who was poisoned. Kalindi took shelter of one of the descendants of Bhrigu Muni, who was there in the Himalayas, named Chavana Muni, and said, "Help! I've been poisoned, but I'd like my son to be born, and please give me some benediction, some means that my son can be born." So Chavana Muni said, "Your son will be born, and he'll become a great, powerful personality, and you should name him Sa-gara." Gara means poison, and Sa means with. Sa-gara. So Sagara was born to Kalindi, although her husband was absent, and Chavana Muni trained the boy, Sagara, in everything. So highly qualified in spiritual knowledge, highly qualified in military science, because he was to become a king. And when he became a mature adult, he went back to Ayodhya and defeated the Haihayas and became king of Ayodhya again. So even in royal dynasties, there's some problems, right? And Sagara accepted 2 wives. The elder of the 2 wives was Keshini, Keshini was born of the Vidarbha province, or Vidarbha line of kings. And the second queen was Sumati, and Sumati was the daughter of Arishtanemi. Arishtanemi was also the parent of Garuda, and so Garuda, this becomes important. Garuda and Sumati were brother and sister. So Sumati and Keshini were his wives, and there were no children with these two wives, and so Sagara and his two wives, Keshini and Sumati, they went to what everybody else does. You go to the forest and do austerities and pray for some benediction. So that's what happened. And for 100 years, they went to Bhrigu Parvat, the place where Bhrigu Muni was residing. Now, the version of the Bhagavatam, it wasn't Bhrigu Muni, but Orva Muni, slight difference. But we'll follow the Valmiki Ramayana version, the narration of Vishwamitra Muni. Bhrigu was very pleased. Said, "What is it that you would like?" 100 years sacrifice. So, I'd like a son. Then he said, "You'll have many sons. One of your wives will have 60,000 sons." It wasn't all at once, it was... And the other wife will have one son. And the wife that has one son, that one son will become the bearer of the lineage, and the other will not. So the wives are really curious. Which one of us will have the 60,000 sons, and which one of us will have the one? And Bhrigu said, "You choose." Fortunately, they didn't want the same one. Keshini wanted the son that would continue the lineage, and Sumati wanted the 60,000 sons. So, Keshini gave birth to Asamanjasa, and Sumati gave birth to a lump, looked like a gourd, and when the gourd opened, 60,000 sons came out. And the 60,000 sons were each put into a pot by nurses and filled with clarified butter, and they nourished those sons until they reached maturity. Now she had 60,000 sons. Asamanjasa, being the firstborn, he became the king. He became the successor king. But there was a little problem. There's always a problem. The little problem was Asamanjasa was cruel. Although he was in line to become the king, he had this thing, this habit, this idiosyncrasy, little eccentric. He'd take little children and throw them into the river, Sarayu, and watch them drown and laugh, and do it again and again. King Sagara had him banished. Now, there's one version that says, actually, in his previous life, he was a mystic. He made some mistake, and so he had to take birth again. And what he did was, by his mystic power, he brought those children back to life. It was part of what he was having fun with. He brought them back to life, And then he went on in his life in the forest and became a great saintly person. But that's not in Valmiki Ramayana. So, Asamanjasa was banished. But before he was banished, he had a son whose name was Anshuman. And Anshuman and these 60,000 sons were part of Sagara's entourage. He's still the king. So, after some time, Sagara wanted to perform an Ashwamedha Yajna. It was approved by his ministers. The priests were all ready to perform the Ashwamedha Yajna. And Indra got a little nervous. He's a very powerful person, so I don't want him to perform this Ashwamedha Yajna. So in the guise of a Rakshasa, he stole the horse. And he purposely took the horse to a place where he had a plan of how the person who's trying to find the horse would have a problem. Indra gets really tricky sometimes. So he took the horse down to the bottom of the planetary systems where Kapila Dev was for some time engaged in his process of meditation. So the ministers advised King Sagara, this is a big problem, because you've started the Ashwamedha Yajna and you can't not complete it, because if you don't complete it, then not only you won't get the result you want, you get a big problem. You get a big reaction for incompleting the Yajna, so better find the horse. King Sagara went to his sons. 60,000 sons, go find the horse. Now, according to the Valmiki Ramayana, they had a particular unique feature. Their nails were diamond-like, and they could use their nails to dig the earth, and so he said, dig the earth. Find the horse. Do it somehow. Don't come back until you find the horse. So they divided up the earth. According to Valmiki Ramayana, 480,000 square miles of land. There's some mathematics. I don't know what the surface of the earth is, but that's the Valmiki Ramayana description. They searched the whole earth. For a long time, they couldn't find the horse, and they came back and said, we can't find the horse. He said, you can't come back and tell me you can't find the horse. Go find the horse. Go to the netherworld if you have to and find the horse. So the answer was, yes, Dad, we're going to go find that horse. And they went in details and found the 4 elephants at the bottom, and all 4 elephants didn't know where the horse was. And so one of them knew, and they said, why don't you go to where Kapila's ashram is? And so they went to where Kapila's ashram is, and they saw the horse. But when they saw the horse, they thought that Kapila was the thief. So the 60,000 sons of Sagara with raised weapons started charging at Kapila Dev to kill him. Now, Valmiki Ramayana doesn't say that what this image shows, and what commonly the images show, is from his eyes the 60,000 sons were engulfed in flames and burned to ashes. Just as he said, hum, and they were burned to ashes. In the Bhagavatam, when Shukadeva Goswami narrates this, he specifically says, it's not even commentary, Shukadeva Goswami says there are versions that says Kapila Dev burned them. And it's not possible the Supreme Lord doesn't do things like that. Rather, because of their sinful dealing, they were burned to ashes from the heat of their own bodies due to their own sin. So there's the horse, and there's the heap of ashes of the 60,000 sons of Sagara. And some time passed, and Sagra became worried. My sons haven't come back. So he sent his grandson, Anshuman, to go follow the path of your uncles and see if you can find him and find the horse. So he did, and he came to the ashram and he saw the ashes and he saw the horse. Now, here's a variation. In the narration of Valmiki Ramayana, Garuda happened to come there because, we'll go back again, Garuda was the brother of the 60,000 sons' mother. Sumati was their mother, and Garuda was Sumati's brother because they had the same father, Arishtanemi. And so Garuda was there to give advice to his relatives. And in this case, Anshuman, and he said, there's only one way that you can relieve your uncles of their sin, otherwise they'll burn in hell, and that is bring the Ganges here. That's my recommendation. Find out a way to bring the Ganges here. And then when the Ganges water washes these ashes, they'll be relieved from the heavenly destination for this sinful activity, and they'll ascend to heaven. The Bhagavatam says it a little differently. The Bhagavatam says, as the picture shows, Anshuman spoke to Kapila and said, what to do about these ashes of my relatives. Said, you bring the Ganges and everything will be nice. And, oh, by the way, here's the horse. And so he accepted the horse, and he went back and brought the horse to Sagara, who then completed the Ashwamedha Yajna, so he wasn't going to get a big reaction. But he was unable, Anshuman was unable to bring the Ganges. So here's this little message. It was Garuda that told Anshuman, bring the Ganges. Bhagavatam says, Kapila said, bring the Ganges. And Anshuman was unsuccessful. Then his son Dilipa was also unsuccessful. But the good news is, Bhagirata was successful. So Bhagirata, carrying forward the tradition of his family, he still wanted to relieve the sons of Sagara from the residing in hell for their bad conduct. And so he went to Gokarna, and with raised arms, according to not this image, but because this image is from the Bhagavatam, from Valmiki Ramayana, with raised arms, surrounded by 5 burning fires, eating only once a month. He must have stepped out of the fires to eat. For 1,000 years, intense austerity. Lord Brahma came. What is it that you would like? He wanted 2 things. I want to bring the Ganges to earth and to wash the ashes of my relatives, the sons of Sagara. And I'd like to have a son to carry on the lineage. So Brahma said, so be it. But if the Ganges descends to earth, earth cannot bear the Ganges. There's only one thing that can bear the descent of the Ganges from heaven, and that's Lord Shiva. So off he went, performing austerities to Lord Shiva. And long austerities to Lord Shiva. And for 1 year, standing on the tips of his toes with his arms raised. That's something like what Hiranyakashipu did. Lord Shiva at the end of one year appeared and said, I understand what you're looking for is that I can bear the descent of the Ganges upon my head, and so I will. He accepted the request. And Ganges then was ready on the order of Brahma to descend. And she was thinking, I'm very powerful. And when I descend to go to the region where Kapila is, I'll wash away the powerful Lord Shiva and he'll go with me. So he understood her mood, was proud, and so he, in the matted hair at the top of his head, he held the entire Ganges, and she couldn't get out. You know, teach her a lesson. But poor Bhagirata needed the Ganges to not be in the matted hair of Lord Shiva, but to go down to the Patala region and wash the ashes of his departed ancestors, the sons of Sagara. So he had to do some more austerities. And severe austerities for some time. Lord Shiva then consented, according to Vishwamitra Muni's narration. Lord Shiva let the Ganges flow into the Bindu Sarovar lake, and once into the lake, she flowed in 7 streams, 3 eastern, 3 western, and 1 followed Bhagirata's chariot. And as Bhagirata's chariot was moving, Ganges was flowing behind him, and he could hear the Ganges flowing, and he went zoom, 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 heading for Patala. But there was a problem. When the flow of the Ganges came by the ashram of Janu Muni, the ashram was disturbed by the entire Ganges. So Janu Muni, very powerful sage, he just cupped his hand and drank the entire Ganges. Now those of you that have been to Mayapur know that there's the ashram of Janu Muni by the side of the Ganges. He just swallowed the Ganges. Poor Bhagirata. He needed the Ganges to go to the Patala region to wash the ashes of the ancestors of the sons of Sagara. And so he pleaded with Janu Muni. And Janu Muni consented. He said, well, I can let the Ganges out of my body, but it can't come out of my mouth because that would be contaminated. So it can come out of my ear. So he let the entire Ganges come out of his ear. And thus, one of the names of the Ganges is Janavi, the daughter of Janu Muni. And so Bhagirata continued on his journey down to Patala, and the Ganges water washed the ashes of Sagara, and everything was nice. Whew. So all of this is Vishwamitra Muni's description, very similar to the description in the Bhagavatam of the history of the Ganges. The next morning, they went to the kingdom of Vishala. Or is it Vishala or Vishala? Prabhupada named the disciple Vishala. So maybe it's Vishala, not Vishala. In any case, they met the king of Vishala. And Ram wanted to know the history. And the history of Vishala, was this is the place where the Pungsa Vana austerity was performed by Diti. Diti was upset that the sons of Aditi were always getting the upper hand. And so she wanted to have a son that could kill Indra. She didn't say it, but she just served Kashyapa Muni so nicely that one day he said, "You please me so nicely. Is there some benediction that you would like?" "Yes, I'd like a son that can kill Indra." Kashyapa is the father of Indra. "I want a son that can kill Indra." Whoa. But he's given his word, and so he very cleverly said, there's a particular procedure, Pungsa Vana, takes 1 year. You have to do it exactly perfectly, it won't work. And then you can get the desired result. He said, "Fantastic. Can you teach me every detail? I'll write it down in my iPad and make sure I do it perfectly right." He instructed her. She began at the Vishala, performing this particular Pungsa Vana austerity. Indra came. Indra is her nephew, her sister's son, to assist her. And he allowed him to assist her. And he was just looking for a fault. And when there was some fault, finally, there's a detail, she made a fault. And so he entered the womb of Diti and cut the embryo into 7 and divided the 7 into another 7 each, and became 49. The children were then born alive, not dead. So Indra then confessed. This was toward the end of this whole thing. He confessed, "I did a bad thing. This is what I did, and this is why I did it. But because of your purity and your austerity and your worship of Lord Vishnu, they were now alive." And she said, "Well, at least you're honest. And you may, because these are not going to be children that will kill Indra, kill you, you can have the children and take them with you to the heavenly regions." So they became known as Maruts. You know, the Maruti? Those of you that live in India. The Maruts are part of the entourage of Indra. The name Marut comes from, Indra said multiple times, "Ma Rudha, Ma Rudha." Don't cry. Na means not. Like Ma, Ya. Ma means not. And Rudha means cry. Don't cry. So they became known as Maruts. They don't cry. They're powerful. So at Vishal is the place where that austerity was performed. That's what Vishwamitra Muni told Ram. They spent the night, and they're almost at their destination. And the destination, there's an image of Kapila. They went to another ashram that looked deserted. The next morning they made their journey, and Ram asked for history. This place looks so wonderful, amazing, fantastic, opulent. I mean, beautiful, like as an ashram, but it's deserted. What's the story? What's the history? So Vishwamitra Muni narrates, this was the ashram of Gautama. And Gautama was married to Ahalya, and there, at that ashram, they performed austerities together. And he tells the history of Ahalya, which differs a little bit from the history in the Bhagavatam. So, in the Ramayana, the history of Ahalya was the time of the churning of the milk ocean. The goddess of fortune, Lakshmi, was produced. And when the whole pastime of the churning of the milk ocean was over, the demigods said to Brahma, "Hey, Brahma, look at the goddess of fortune and Mohini Murti, and you haven't done anything like that in your creation." So he took up the challenge and he created Ahalya, the most perfectly beautiful and exquisite and charming and qualified female in the whole universe. The Bhagavatam description is she was the daughter of such and such person who was in the line of kings. It comes from I forget. So Brahma, according to Vishwamitra Muni's description, Brahma was recognizing Ahalya is so qualified. She should only marry the most qualified person. Indra considered himself to be most qualified, but Brahma didn't. So Brahma made a very interesting challenge. The person that can marry Ahalya is the person that can circumambulate the universe first. So the demigods got in their carriers and were having a race going around the universe. But Gautama, being a great sage, knowing the scriptures, he understood that a cow embodies the whole universe. So he just circumambulated a cow. Brahma said, "You won," and entrusted Ahalya in marriage to Gautama. So there was Gautama and Ahalya doing austerities at this ashram. Vishwamitra Muni is describing, narrating. One fine day, Indra, who hadn't given up his attachment to Ahalya, came in disguise as Gautama at a time when Gautama had gone to the river to engage in bathing and his morning duties, and looking just like Gautama, he approached Ahalya with improper motives and words. She knew that wasn't her husband. She knew that it was Indra, but she was flattered. The king of heaven, he likes me. And so she yielded to his proposition. And after the business was completed, she then advised Indra, "If my husband comes back and comes to know that this has taken place, we're both finished. You better leave at once." Indra took the advice and started departing quickly, but unfortunately practically bumped into Gautama. And he knew he couldn't hide anything from Gautama, and he fell at his feet and made profuse apology. But he already done his dirty deed. So Gautama said, "You sinful wretch, you shall immediately lose your manhood." And that's what happened. And shamed, Indra left, and he turned to his wife. And there's a difference in the Ramayanas. One is you should become a rock. But Valmiki Ramayana doesn't say you become a rock. He says you should become invisible to the world. You live here in this ashram for a long time, eating nothing but air, hiding yourself under leaves and bushes, and you'll be relieved from the curse that I'm now uttering when Rama, in the lineage of the Ikshvaku dynasty, the son of Dasarath, comes here and places his feet in the ashram. And as he places his feet in the ashram, you'll be relieved of this curse. And I will come back and be with you, because you'll be purified by your austerities and the touch of Ram in this ashram. Now, the other of the Ramayanas, Ramcharitamanas, speaks differently. We mentioned this before. Adhyatma Ramayana speaks that she became a stone and Ram just touched a stone. They even have a stone at the ashram, said that's it. That's the stone that Ahalya occupied. Anyway, so here's some of the images. Ahalya is freed from the curse just by Ram entering into the ashram. This is part of Vishwamitra Muni's plan for Ram to do this service. And Ahalya is greatly relieved and greatly pleased. She's fully purified. All lust and reaction to that bad deed is gone. And Ram, we see in the image in the upper right, that's Gautama returns. The B.G. Sharma painting of that pastime. It's a favorite pastime, right? So this is showing her she's coming out of the rock. This is the Tulsi Ramayana or Tulsi version. So she's relieved of that sin. Gautama comes and they resume their activities there at this ashram. And their journey is completed, and this narration this morning is completed by reaching the precincts or the outside of the region of King Janak, where they will be greeted. King Janak will come with his chief minister, Shatananda, the son of Gautama, and we'll continue this description in a while. So, that's it for this morning, and now we're going to